Part 261. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2606. Liang Yushi sat on the edge of the fire, stretched out his feet and took off his shoes. An indescribable smell came over. Bai Shan fanned, turned around and changed his seat before sitting down. As a result, Magistrate Tang also took off his shoes and socks. Bai Shan looked at them and asked, "Do you still have socks?" The county magistrate Tang sighed, "Everything I've worn before has been washed and dried in the city." Bai Shan frowned, and for the sake of his nose, he gave them 3 new pairs of socks. When everyone saw it, they immediately took it with joy, and said with a smile, "It's still Master Bai who pays attention." Bai Shan took things out of the bag, first put the medicine bag he had been wearing today and roasted it by the fire, letting it slowly emit the medicine smell, driving away the mosquitoes that had been buzzing around them all the time. Then he took out a bottle of ointment, opened it and smelled it. Tang he immediately asked, "What is this?" Bai Shan handed him the ointment and said, "Refreshing, I've been smoked a lot." Tang he opened it and smelled it. He felt a lot cooler and instantly refreshed his mind. He smiled and handed it to Yushi Liang and Yushi Ren, who were looking at him. The 2 censors nodded again and again, "Yes, yes, Lord Bai has a good wife." Bai Shan ignored them. In the past 2 days, they rubbed his stuff a lot. They thought they were really hard and simple. It was just troublesome to bring their own things, and someone who brought them would still be able to use them. Master Tang stepped on the grass with his bare feet, washed his hands in a puddle, then took the pancakes baked by his followers, sat on the grass casually and asked, "Do you mean we are still in the village?" Liang Yushi said, "This is a big village with 167 households. If it weren't for the few villages nearby, it could have become a big market. Today, it is very dangerous that the chiefs will stop them, otherwise their hose might be real. Can smash on our heads." But Yushi Ren sneered, "Do you think it's really kind-hearted to grow up there? If we hadn't died and they were complicit, things would have gotten out of hand. Do you think they would stop it?" He said, "I see, the 2 chiefs are the worst offenders here. Look, we've walked through quite a few villages in the past few days, and most of them can be appeased. Even though they believed the rumors and were very dissatisfied with the imperial court, but I don't want to pull out the young crops, but this whole big village, you can look at the side." Ren Yushi was heartbroken. Such a good young crop has grown so tall, and they are willing to pull it out. I don't believe it if there is no such growth in it. Bai Shan also glanced at the field next to him. Although it was already dark, the moonlight reflected on the water in the field and could still see some of the conditions in the field. Most of the young plants in this field were plucked out. He sighed, "At this time pulling out the young plants, even replanting can't be done." Master Tang said while nibbling on the cake, "So tomorrow we have to find a way to divert the 2 Lilongs in this village, and then enter the village to talk to the villagers." Bai Shan asked, "How to lead?" Master Tang was about to speak when a guard of the imperial army came up and said, "Master, those 2 miles are coming." Master Tang smiled and said, "Isn't this coming?" He had 2 Lilongs brought up. They didn't come by themselves, and there were some young men behind them, carrying 2 big baskets. After smelling it, Bai Shan whispered, "It's the smell of steamed buns and buns." The 2 lieutenants trotted up, knelt down at Tang he as soon as they stepped forward, and kowtowed again and again, "I scared the adults today, the little people are guilty, and the little people are guilty." Tang he didn't wear shoes and socks, so he quickly stepped forward to help him up, and said with a straight face, "What did the old man say? If it wasn't for the old man to stop him today, we would have been beaten to death by the mob long ago." He had an angry look on his face. A group of bad guys dared to attack the officials of the imperial court. When I return to Beijing to report to the holy sage, I will send the imperial army to exterminate them all. The faces of the 2 lieutenants stiffened, and they quickly said, "My lord, forgive me, they have no knowledge." Seeing that the Lord has brought so many officials into the village, they thought they were going to forcibly take back the land, so they became impulsive and asked the Lord to give the commoners one opportunity, to say that they are mob, that is absolutely not dare. Master Tang frowned. The chief immediately got closer to Lord Tang, and quietly stuffed a purse into Lord Tang's hand. He whispered, "Please also ask Lord Hai Han." Master Tang pinched the purse, and he could figure out that it was silver, but it was definitely not copper coins anyway, and it was a lot for such a big piece. The lieutenant was so generous to him, it seemed that he was very rich. Master Tang tucked it directly into his sleeve. When the lieutenant saw that he had put it away, he was immediately happy, and quickly turned around to have the two big baskets lifted up, opened the lids, and let everyone see the steaming steamed buns and buns inside. He bent down and said, "The adults have not yet, let's eat, the village is shabby, and there is nothing that can be obtained, so the small people asked the family to prepare some steamed buns, and the adults should not dislike it." Tang he swallowed his saliva. Although he really wanted to eat it, he didn't dare to eat it, so he smiled and nodded, "That's good, you guys stay." He said, "Since it's the old man who interceded, this official will give them another chance. In this way, tomorrow morning, the two of you will come with me back to the governor's mansion to meet people. At that time, some documents need to be signed, so this official will have a good time when I go back." An explanation. If he had something to say, he said, "This official has come all the way from the capital for meritorious service. If the errand cannot be done, whoever does not make this official feel better, this official will make everyone sad." When the two chiefs heard it, they immediately said, "Yes, yes, the common people know." They thought in their hearts, "How could it be a long distance from the capital to this place?" Master Tang let them go. When the people left, a subordinate officer led a dog up and took out two steamed buns from the depths of the two baskets for it to eat. Everyone closed the lid again and swallowed at them. A secretary of the governor's office couldn't help but said, "Sir, are we being too cautious? There are so many of us, and we are court officials. Could it be that they dare to poison us?" Master Tang took out the purse from his sleeve and threw it to Yashi Ren, asking him to record the account, and after hearing the words, "It's not a big mistake to be careful, this official has grown up from a young age, and this kind of carelessness caused the human world. There shouldn't be too many tragedies." Bai Shan asked, "Who will enter the village tomorrow?" Master Tang smiled at him, "What do you think, younger brother?" "I can go in," Bai Shan said, "I've seen it roughly today and wrote down the main troublemakers. When I go in again, I'll avoid them first, but you have to leave most of them to me." Master Tang looked at the two censors. They came down to continue investigating the matter of Kizhu, and they also stared at the two of them, so one of the two of them must be left behind. Yashi Ren thought for a while and said, "I'll stay." Master Tang nodded, "Okay, I will only take 2 bodyguards and my entourage, and leave the rest to you. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2607. This village is too big, and it is organized to oppose the redemption of the land. It cannot achieve its goal with the same careful and considerate persuasion as the previous villages. So they can only use other means. Before dawn, they all woke up. Now is the most relaxed time of the day. Bai Shan and the others got up and left quietly, avoiding the people who were staring at them. When the two lieutenants came to Yao, there were only a few people left in Master Tang. They were stunned for a moment, and just as they were about to ask, Tang He had already stood up and said, "Let's go, hurry back, I haven't bathed in 3 or 4 days." The two chiefs followed hesitantly, and only after walking all the way did they find a chance to speak. "Master Tang, what about the other 2 adults and officials?" Tang He waved his hand indifferently and said, "They're going to the next town." He glanced at them and said with a sneer, "You kiss who has a lot of troubles, these fields belong to the imperial court, you bought them at a low price, and now your majesty bought them back at the original price, it has been cheap for you all these years. Now, what's not to be satisfied with?" The faces of the chiefs changed slightly, and before they had time to speak, Tang He pouted again and said, "But if this drudgery hadn't been explained by Shangguan, I wouldn't be willing to come over and do thankless things. Now the court is worried about these tenant farmers have become a mob, so as long as you can appease the tenant farmers, it is not impossible for you to open the net and let go." The hearts of the two lieutenants flew for 9 days and then fell back, almost unbearable. At this time, Bai Shan and the others had circled to the end of the village and hid directly in the woods. Ren Yushi stretched out his hand and pressed the big black mosquito on the back of his hand. His face was very dark, it's like fighting a war. Bai Shandao, looking at yesterday's stance, it's similar to fighting a war. In this entire village, there are only 89 households with their own land, and the most is 12 mu, the least is 2 mu, and the rest are basically the tenants who rely on the tenant rent are also in the same situation that caused the situation like yesterday. Yushi Ren thought for a while and then said, "After entering the village, Master Bai will have to persuade the villagers. Your words will make you feel more friendly." Bai Shan nodded, but he didn't leave immediately, but said, "Last night, Lord Ren didn't say what to do with these tenants in the future." Yushi Ren glanced at him. "Master Tang told you to act on the camera, so Master Bai should obey." Bai Shan raised his eyebrows slightly, knowing what he knew. Tang Xuexiang asked him to make up his own mind, "But isn't this your censor here?" When he looked back, he made a promise to appease the hearts of the people. If you don't fulfill it, it's not him who will be scolded. And what about going back and impeaching him for not playing by the rules? With the promise of Ren Yushi, Bai Shan led the people out, and he decided to follow his own wishes. The officers and soldiers went back and forth, and started sweeping from the end of the village where they were least aware of, calling people out from house to house and led them to the center of the village together. They only gathered people from the end of the village, and they stopped when they gathered 80 or 90 households. The rest came after they heard the news. When some of the more active people at the head of the village arrived with wooden sticks and hose, Bai Shan and Ren Yushi were standing on a high platform that was temporarily set up with several tables. He nodded to the guard beside him, and the guard pulled out his knife, slashed it on a wooden stake beside him, and shouted loudly, "Your Excellency has something to say, be quiet." The noisy voices quieted down, and Bai Shan looked at them and said, "Did you know that just by attacking the court officials yesterday, you can already be defined as a mob, and for those who rebel, you can kill without mercy?" Everyone panicked, "But you have also seen that today we don't have as many people as yesterday, do you know why?" Why? "Because your governor went into the city on your behalf to plead guilty." Bai Shan said nonsense with his eyes open. "Yesterday's events were not what your governor intended, and he also said that you are afraid that the land will be bought back by the Yamen and will not be cultivated. Master Tang takes pity on you, and thinks that you are the first offender, so I decided to forgive you. But there are some things that this official thinks it's impossible not to make it clear to you." Bai Shan said, "Do you know that the fields in this area were originally official fields? Everyone knows this, but they didn't know it before, but they all know it now. Recently, there has been such a big fuss. They all say that the Yamen do things without morality. They were short of money a few years ago, so they sold the land to their owner. As a result, now that they are not short of money, they regret it and want to buy Daiqiang back. They have been planting the fields for so many years, and they have all planted this year. Now they have to take the fields back, and the officials are going to force them to death. As long as I think about this, everyone's emotions are stirred up again." Bai Shan said loudly, "All these official fields were sold by the former governor of Kishu in collusion with local big clans and aristocratic families at low prices. The price of the fields is less than 1/3 of the market price. No one moved, Bai Shan continued, and these fields should have your share. As soon as the sentence came out, everyone couldn't help but cheer up. Bai Shan raised his hand slightly and said, according to the laws of the Great Jin dynasty, anyone who has become a farmer can be assigned 20 acres of Yanjai field. How many people in your village were born last year, but they can be allocated the land, and how many people were born the year before, but was divided into fields again? These official fields were originally intended to be distributed to the males, and because of the sale of these official fields, the registered official fields in your villages and towns are scarce, and when it is your turn to divide the fields, you will find that there is no land to divide. Everyone couldn't help but whispered, it seems to be true. Last year, the 3 boys of Zuz's family didn't get a share of the land, and they haven't got any share in the past few years. The official said it nicely. It's not certain that you have taken the land back and divided it. Moreover, how many households can there be in our village who have not divided the land? What about the others? Yeah, we don't have land points, and if we don't have land to grow, we will starve to death within a year. Could it be possible to divide so much land? Bai Shan said, of course not, the rest of the land still needs to be cultivated, and you have just changed from tenant farmers in other families to tenant farmers in the imperial court, and I can call the shots. The rent collected by the imperial court and you will definitely not exceed 40%. Yushi Ren couldn't help turning his head to look at him, and began to wink at him, don't talk big, it's not more than 40%, and it's 40% at most. The new prefect of Kizu knows that he will tear up Bai Shan? Bai Shan continued, and the court has already made a decree, and the announcement has been posted on the city wall. It has already been stated that the harvest of this year's leased field still belongs to you. The court will buy it this year and will not take over the fields until the end of the autumn harvest. I don't know about you. Where did the rumors come from, destroying the young crops? Do you know that destroying the young crops is also a big crime? After Bai Shan finished speaking, he gave Yushi Ren a wink, and Yushi Ren stepped forward to tell them the crime of destroying the young crops and the crime of attacking the officials. Master Bai doesn't care about you, but it's not something you can bully casually. I will arrest these leaders. This official suspects that they are related to the rumors circulating recently. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2608. Without Li Chang, among the remaining people, even those with heart and courage are not strong enough. Yushi Ren came forward with a stern face, and when the guard of the Forbidden Army on the side came out with a long knife, most of the villagers in front were unable to hold their hands and were organized when he came. He didn't even have a stick. Therefore, when those few people were pinned down, the person with the hoe behind him hesitated and did not dare to make a move. Their momentum was suppressed, and the courage that was hyped up yesterday was gone. After arresting 7 people and gagging them aside, Bai Shan continued to preach to everyone with a calm expression. This village is not a natural village, but was later relocated by an organization. Most of them are displaced people and poor people after losing their land. Therefore, the family is not large, and there is no leader like the lichen, so it is more convenient for them to persuade. After Bai Shan finished preaching to them about the policies of the imperial court with a dry mouth, people called the heads of each household to him. There were more than 100 people, including more than 20 elderly people. Bai Shan's eyes swept over them, and saw that many people's clothes were covered with patches and layers. Only 3 of them were wearing fine cotton cloth, and not many people were wearing fine linen cloth. So Chongren Yushi nodded slightly, stepped forward, and said, I think you are not too young, you should have some knowledge, not to mention there are more than 20 old husbands. He said, the policy of the imperial court is mainly based on official documents. Although this place is far from Kishu city, if you are willing to wait, you will be able to know the meaning of the imperial court. I think you all know what kind of person the saint is. Since he made a promise, he will definitely do it, not to mention that there is Lord Wei in the court. Hearing that Wei Ji was there, the more than 100 people standing below felt more at ease. Bai Shan gave them time to digest his words, and after a long pause, he continued, "These fields belong to the imperial court, and belong to you. Now that you are not married, there will always be in the future. Who doesn't have a child at home now? Bai Shandao, if you were born this year, you can wait up to 16 years to divide the fields, but these fields are always in the hands of those people, and you will never have the opportunity to divide the fields." The household registration system in Dajin was very strict. Except for the large-scale distribution of fields in the first few years of the founding of the People's Republic of China, the fields after that were only distributed to Chengding, and a single person had only one chance to get the field in his life. There is no longer a chance to redivide the fields. Among them, the mouth-divided fields cannot be bought and sold, and they still belong to the imperial court. After the death of the person, or when the land cannot be cultivated after leaving the hometown, the yamen will take it back. Only the Yanjai field can be inherited and cannot be bought or sold. But it's not really that you can't buy and sell, and there are special circumstances to sell. At the beginning, the yamen would also review special circumstances, but later, more and more people sold land, and more officers and paper and ink were spent, so the yamen did not care about it. As long as you sell it, someone buys it, and the yamen side will transfer it. Bai Shan said, "Everyone, the two chiefs have a lot of fields in their hands, and they are equivalent to the village head that your boss put here, so they naturally don't want the court to buy the land, but your boss can really be better than the sage. Are you okay?" The heads of households couldn't help looking at each other. An old man stepped forward with the hand of a young man next to him. His clothes were all patches and his face was sad. "Are you renting these places?" Bai Shan nodded decisively and said, "Yes." He paused and said, "When the new governor arrives, I am willing to intercede for you, and how about renting the land for the next year for you?" Bai Shan said so many things before, but none of these words touched people. As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes lit up, and the old man even stared at Bai Shan and asked, "What's the name of this lord?" Bai Shan cupped his hands and said, "I'm here with Bai Shan." He thought about it for a while, then turned around and called for good luck, "Is there a famous post in the bag?" Daji was taken aback, and immediately pulled out a famous post. Bai Shan handed the famous post to the old man in public. "If everything settles down and you fail to get what I promised, you can go to me with this post." The old man clenched the famous post in his hand and knelt on the ground with the hand of the young man, and the others knelt down one after another. Bai Shan quickly helped him up. Yishi Ren, who was behind him, shook his head slightly, but didn't say anything against it. Bai Shan said, "Then you can safely take care of the crops in the fields. The Dragon Boat Festival is approaching, and the wheat will be ready to be harvested soon. Don't miss the farming time again." The tenant farmers responded in a row and promised Bai Shan that they would never make trouble again in the future. After the matter was settled, Bai Shan and Ren Yushi returned to Kishu city with a sour smell of sweat. The two of them had not washed during this period of time. They had stepped on muddy water, sweated a lot, and had an unpleasant smell on their bodies. As soon as they returned to Kishu, Tang He smiled when he saw them. "Go and take a bath, I let someone prepare hot water for you." Ren Yushi didn't move, but looked left and right and asked, "Where's Liang Yushi?" Tang He said, "He went to pick up the newly appointed governor, and said he was here today." Censor Ren nodded. "What about the two lieutenants?" "In the prison," Tang He said with a smile. "You stopped people in the village, I arrested both of them, not many people came to make trouble, I have caught all I can, and we will come back together again." "Trial?" Yushi Ren nodded and turned to leave. Bai Shan then turned around and went to take a bath, while Tang He followed behind. When Bai Shan was taking a shower, he sat cross-legged outside the screen, poured himself a cup of tea, caught a glimpse of the clothes, fanned with disgust, and called Daji, "Take all these clothes off, it's too disturbing." Mood. When Daji went down with his clothes in his arms, Tang He asked, "How are you guys doing?" Bai Shan explained in detail, and after getting dressed, he said, "I promised them to rent the land for them next year." Tang He spit out a sip of tea and stared at him. "What do you think? How can you make such a promise?" Bai Shandao, "There are too many of them. If we don't have this promise, I'm afraid that if we walk forward, they will follow into the city and continue to make trouble. Also," he said after a pause, "I think they are just looking for a place to stand. Why should we make them panic? Just give them a promise that will make them feel at ease." Master Tang scolded him for a while, speechless. Even if a promise is to be made, it is the promise made to them by the new governor, and he will be in charge of this place in the future. The talented person is easy to manage. You made a promise beyond him, and gave a famous post. Will they still be able to listen to the governor of Kishu in the future? Bai Shandao, so what I'm talking about is to intercede for them and be the middleman, guaranteeing that they will rent the land next year. But if the new governor gives them 3 or 5 years in one go, who do you think they are grateful for? Of course it was the new inspector. But Master Tang glanced at him. How do you know that the new prefect is willing? Bai Shan poured him a cup of tea diligently and said, "That's why senior brother Lao helped him." Tang He regretted following him a little bit. Why is his eyes so powerful? How can he see the micro-expression of the cunning Yushi Ren, who seems to have an inside story to trick them? See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2609. The new governor of Kishu was transferred from Yunzhou. Although he was transferred at the same level, Kishu was on the edge of the capital and was much richer than Yunzhou, which was under the Great Wall. The achievements made here are also easier to be seen by others. Tang He sat cross-legged on the couch and said to Bai Shan, "This prefect's surname is Yu. Before I came, my father and I asked about him. He is a relatively tough prefect. His Majesty specially transferred him back from Yunzhou. The Kishu side should be cleaned out. Such a character doesn't like being made decisions on his behalf, and he doesn't like being forced by others, so when you meet me, look at me and act." Tang He looked up and down at Bai Shan with wet hair, and smiled slightly. Said, "Since your original intention is for the people of this side, you shouldn't care much about reputation, right?" Bai Shan raised his eyebrows slightly and said with a smile, "I'm new to officialdom, so I don't care much about this." Tang He nodded, "That's right, you'll have to go out in the future. You don't need to pay much attention to these official voices. If you want me to say, no matter what his reputation is, as long as he can get things done, you can learn from your brother Yang Shuexiu. Don't look at him as a handsome gentleman. When he is shameless, he is really shameless. Alas, he has a good face, so when he is shameless, he is not shameless. On the contrary, the people who followed him were often accidentally injured." Tang He took a moment of silence for himself in his heart, and then said to Bai Shan, "He should be able to arrive today, but I don't know if he was delayed on the road. It seems that it will be later. You ask Daji to choose elegant clothes for you. Anyway, how do you dress up elegantly? You are still tender. It's okay to pretend to be a gentleman of an aristocratic family who has no ability and kindness when you meet someone, right?" Bai Shan was stunned for a moment and then nodded. Tang He patted him on the shoulder happily. Okay, if you pretend to be good, we can not only rent land for a few more years for the more than 100 households, but also rent land for other tenants." Bai Shan smiled slightly and said, "You don't care if the merits are all credited to senior brother Yu Shishi." "Hey, what's the use of my merits?" he said, I'm only promoted now, as long as I can buy back the land and put an end to the tenant-peasant rebellion, I'll be considered a great merit. As for other merits, we will all enjoy it. After the meat is served, I have to share some for others to eat. Where are the two censors? Tang He waved his hand and said, don't worry, they are here to supervise us, and we have to decide how to do things. Even if they don't want to, they can't say it in front of Governor Yu, not to mention my father. Tang He was refreshed when he said these words. It was true that he finally got his father's light. Bai Shan thinks about it too. All the censors in the world are under the subordinates of Lord Tang. This one is the son of Lord Tang after all, and the son has voluntarily handed over his merits to the prefects. What else can they do? So Bai Shan turned over the box. He was a little distressed. This time, he brought a total of 4 sets of clothes with him. For convenience, one of them was an official uniform, and the others were casual clothes that were easy to get in and out of. Because he knew that he was going to the village, he might have to deal with fights or something, so he wore all light narrow sleeves, 2 sets of fine linen and 1 set of satin. The color was either azure or sapphire blue, the brightest. 1 set is an official uniform instead, if you want to look a little more tender. Bai Shan turned around on several sets of clothes, and finally settled on the light red official uniform. There are 2 kinds of his official uniforms, one is light red and the other is dark green, all because he has a title and His Majesty has a reward. For each type, Mrs. Lu made 2 sets for him, plus the gift part, there were 4 sets in total. This time, because he wanted to press people, he deliberately wore a light red official uniform. Tang He walked up with his hands behind his back, glanced at it and remembered that this is not the capital. Where does Bai Shan have such suitable clothes to wear? So his eyes were fixed on the official uniform. Forget it, you'd better wear your official uniform. We'll all wear it then. Tang He remembered such a decision. He touched his chin and mused, you and I are both light red, and the 2 censors are dark green. Not bad, not bad, just wear official uniforms. So Bai Shan put on his official uniform, tidied his hair, and waited. Of course, they didn't just wait. The 2 went to meet with Yashi Ren to summarize the events of the past few days. When they finished their work and looked outside, the sun was about to go down, and the new governor had not arrived yet, and Liang Yushi did not move. The 3 of them looked at each other and couldn't help frowning. The capital is not far from Kizhu. Didn't they say that the new governors left the capital yesterday, and they should have arrived today, right? Tang He got up and walked out, calling a subordinate of the governor's house, go to the gate of the city to have a look. Why haven't we welcomed the new governor yet? Yes. Wait a minute, Tang He called to stop, looked left and right, and asked, your long history Sima and the magistrate of Guo County haven't come back yet? Yes, they all went to the city gate to pick up the new governor early in the morning. Tang He frowned slightly, looked back at Yashi Ren and Bai Shan, waved the subordinates to step back, and then paced back. Why don't we eat first? Otherwise, he was afraid that he would be hungry again tonight, and he always felt that something was going to happen. Bai Shan nodded again and again. Where could Yashi Ren eat? Shouldn't we rush out of the city to see what's going on? It's impossible to see. The situation in Kizhu is complicated. When they arrived, Chang Shi was newly promoted, and Sima was his replacement. Oh, the former Chang Shi and Sima are now in prison for company. Therefore, things in the governor's mansion are very messy, and some things can't be done by anyone at all. Otherwise, why would the 4 of them go in and out together? It's really that no one in the governor's mansion can help them. And the outside is too dangerous, they are afraid that they will die outside accidentally. Tang He and Bai Shan immediately set the kitchen to have a working meal, seized the time to eat 2 bowls of rice, and then put down their chopsticks, and a burst of hurried footsteps rushed out. Bai Shan and Tang He looked at each other. Sure enough, something happened. Ren Yushi, who has been frowning tightly and is too worried to eat? He got up immediately, the subordinates had already rushed in, and shouted out of breath, "Sir, something has happened." Tang He had already sat calmly and asked, "What's the big deal?" "The new assassin has killed." Tang He got up in shock, and Bai Shan was also startled, and asked in unison, "Who did you kill?" The subordinate official said with a pale face, "Kill 3 people, the second master of the Zhu family, the eldest son of the Chai family, and the third master of the Zhang family." Tang He's ho sounded, these 3 were all very well chosen, they were all the main handlers of the public land on the file. He and Bai Shan looked at each other and asked, "Apart from the 3 of them, is there no one else?" "No, no," the subordinate said, wiping the sweat on his forehead. "It was said that the new governor wanted to call them for questioning, but they not only did not listen to the call, but also spoke evil words, and the new governor sent someone to arrest him. Because they were stubbornly resisting, their officers and soldiers accidentally killed them in self-defense, and injured many slaves of the 3 families." "Any tenant injured?" The subordinate official shook his head and said he didn't know. He didn't know until he got to the gate of the city. How could he know if the tenants participated in the battle? See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2610. Master Tang took Bai Shan and Yashi Ren to see the situation, but only halfway out of the street on horseback, he met Inspector Yu and his party, who came back in a mighty manner. Liang Yushi's face was very dark, but he did not speak in front of everyone. Inspector Yu has a beard on his back, a beard on his face, and his eyes are like knives. Although he just sits quietly on the horse, he is as sharp as a half-sheathed knife. Master Tang restrained the horse, lowered his voice and said to Bai Shan, "Sure enough, he has a higher official position than us, but we are patrolling by order, and there is a censor on the side, so don't be afraid, you will follow me in a while." Bai Shan nodded slightly. The 2 sides met face to face. With a smile on his lips, Master Tang sat on the horse and clasped his fists with the person opposite, but the newly appointed Inspector Yu. Inspector Yu also smiled and returned the salute with a fist. "It's you, but Master Tang from the capital?" Tang He replied yes, so the 2 sides dismounted and saluted, and then returned to the governor's mansion together. Master Tang glanced back and found that Inspector Yu had brought a lot of people. In addition to the people who went to greet him, there were about 100 people, all wearing military armor. He smiled and nodded to Governor Yu, and rode back with him. Entering the hall of the governor's mansion, Master Tang asked, "When did Master Yu arrive in Kizhu?" "Last night." Inspector Yu sat on the chair with a golden sword, unfastened the sword at his waist and put it aside, and then smiled with Master Tang. "Last night, when I went outside the city gate was already down. This official is not good. Then I asked people to open it, so I took people to sleep outside." "Then why didn't you enter the city this morning?" "Today, before dawn, I met a tenant who wanted to enter the city to seek justice. If I asked carefully, it was completely provoked. This official wanted to chat with the people behind the scenes, but who would have guessed that these people would fail? He resisted and wanted to hurt this officer, but fortunately, the personal soldiers brought by this officer were able to kill the 3 thieves in one fell swoop." Liang Yushi couldn't listen anymore, so he got up and said, "You Inspector, your Majesty wants to treat these people with tenderness, but you kill people as soon as you take office." Inspector Yu said, "This official is self-defense. Whether it is self-defense or not is not up to you alone. When I return to the capital, I will definitely read your book and tell the truth to the princes and His Majesty." Inspector Yu said, "You are not there, how do you know it is not the truth?" "You." Okay. Master Tang hurriedly stopped between the 2 of them. It was hard to imagine that he also had a day as a peacemaker. He said, "The top priority is not accountability, I will talk about this later, the most important thing at the moment." how to deal with these fields to be redeemed, and how to deal with the relationship between the Yamen and these big clans. Master Tang turned to look at Governor Yu and said, Master Yu was not an official on his first day, and he has also been a provincial governor. When you know how important these local clans are, since you dare to kill, you have already figured out how to deal with it. He is the governor of Kishu, and we have no intention of intervening. Liang Yushi disagreed, Master Tang. Tang he stretched out his hand to suppress what he was about to say, and said, Yushi Liang, it is your censor's responsibility to picket hundreds of officials, not your official. Inspector Yu's eyes were slightly bright, and he looked at him with piercing eyes. Tang Daran said, this official came to Kishu by order only to deal with the matter of redemption of land, and the issue of arranging the tenants concerned. All other affairs are local affairs of Kishu, and the prefect of Kishu should come here. Deal with. Hearing this, Inspector Yu laughed and got up, stepped forward and grabbed Master Tang's hand and said, Master Tang is clear, just because of these words, this official should honor you with 3 bowls, come here, let the kitchen prepare wine and food, today I'm going to host a banquet at the governor's mansion to entertain Master Tang, and these 3 adults, it's supposed to be for you to wash away the dust. Bai Shan's 4 people, who is going to wash the dust off for whom? It's been 10 days since they've been here. Forget it, don't care, let's eat together. Bai Shan rubbed his belly, the work meal was eaten early, and he didn't eat it if he knew it earlier. He quietly glanced at Yushi Ren, but Yushi Ren was frowning and didn't care about food. Master Tang felt that the acting style of this Inspector Yu required them to change some strategies, mainly because they had to reach a consensus on some things, otherwise the future work would be difficult to carry out. Although they have been here for 10 days, they have temporarily appeased the troubled tenants, but they have not completely resolved it. As long as the land is not fully redeemed in 1 day and the cutting procedures are officially completed, then this matter is not over. Prior to this, although Master Tang and the others were both benevolent and powerful, they were mostly appeasement, mainly enticing and persuading, supplemented by threats. As soon as this Inspector Yu came, he directly cut down 3 people, and almost changed their previous strategy one by one. The partial family is also justifiable. Tang he doesn't want to fight with the people in the governor's mansion when he fights with the local clan outside, so he intends to have a good talk with the Governor Yu. Inspector Yu, through what he said just now, also felt that this Master Tang was very interesting, different from the censor who wanted to scold him with blood. So I would like to talk to him. So the 2 sides made their own decisions when their eyes met, and they avoided the censor and got together. Well, he used the pretext of Yu Shishi taking a shower and changing his clothes, and Master Tang also said that he had worked hard all day and needed to rest. Of course, it wasn't just the 2 of them. Master Tang brought Bai Shan, and Inspector Yu also brought his lieutenant. The 2 sides smoothly converged in the main courtyard of the governor's mansion. Yushi Liang and Yushi Ren were not fools either. When they went to Master Tang and Bai Shan to discuss what to do next, they found out that they were not in the house and guessed that they were going to see Governor Yu in private, so they were a little angry. They are here, what do you mean? Does Lord Tang agree with Inspector Yu's move? Yushi Ren was also very angry. When we left the capital, Lord Wei and Lord Tang repeatedly warned that Kishu lost a lot of land, and many people participated, so we must be gentle, so as not to make a big mess. Kishu is not far from the capital. Far away, once there is chaos. Liang Yushi was still a little angry. The 4 of us have lived and died together, and the 2 of them just left us. Ren Yushi, yes, they lived and died together. Master Tang and Inspector Yu introduced Bai Shan. This is the Zhongshishiren in front of His Majesty, Bai Zishan. Before he came, Inspector Yu naturally asked about the team that was going out of Beijing this time. He knew that Tang He was the main manager, while Bai Shan was young and had little experience. He smiled and said, Master Bai is really young and promising. Bai Shan smiled and said, Xiaoguan has long heard that Inspector Yu is brave and good at fighting, and this is a well-deserved reputation. Inspector Yu raised his lips slightly happily, asked them to sit down, and said, Master Tang has been in Qizhou for a decade now, how are things going? Liang Yushi and Ren Yushi, after all, it was a wrong payment. See you tomorrow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2611. Tang He glanced at Bai Shanho before saying, the notice has been posted, and I have seen the magistrates of various counties, temporarily appeasing the troubled tenants, but in fact we have only contacted half of the fields and tenants. Tang He briefly summarized his work during this period and said, there are more than 18 hectares of land that have been redeemed now. Oh, this part is not counted as the 10 hectares of the Zheng family. The rest, because the tenants' emotions are still it was a little unstable, so it didn't work out. Inspector Yu frowned, Master Tang can't do anything about it. Master Tang said with a smile, there are still some, the excuses they give are just to maintain stability, so as long as we appease the tenants and they don't make trouble, these people will have no excuses to delay any longer. The side has an excuse to take them directly. He said, now we have appeased many tenant farmers, and we are sure about the 23 hectares of land involved, but we have never signed a redemption contract and are waiting for the prefect of Yu to take office. Inspector Yu, wait for me. He looked at Master Tang with some doubts, isn't this redemption directly funded by the Ministry of Households? Master Tang is also an inspector, so he should be able to directly call the shots, right? Yes, but firstly, this is Qizhou after all. In the future, it will be Governor Yu who will govern on this land. Secondly, Tang He turned to look at Bai Shan, who was sitting beside him, and said helplessly, it's all my fault. He is young and ignorant, but he is too soft-hearted and kind. I made a promise that I shouldn't have made without seeing it. Inspector Yu frowned slightly, looked at Bai Shan, and saw that his face was fair and handsome, sitting there as straight as a bamboo, but his temperament was gentle, and at first glance, he looked like a son of a noble family, so he raised his eyebrows, like a smile that was not a smile. Said, Master Tang should know that I only killed 3 people, right? Those 3 people are all local nobles in Qizhou. In the future, if I want to govern here, I can't let people bully me. If I make a deal with them, Master Tang doesn't have to speak. Inspector Yu misunderstood, Tang he said quickly, he didn't make a promise with those nobles. He glanced at Bai Shan again, and Bai Shan lowered his head in shame, and then he sighed heavily. When he was comforting the tenants, he saw them in rags, and he was really frightened, so he didn't say anything. Hold back and make promises to them. Tang he turned his head and said, I'm not so quick to apologize to Governor Yu. Bai Shan hurriedly stood up and bowed to Governor Yu, and said with shame, Xiaoguan has caused trouble for the adults. Inspector Yu heard that it was not the gentry and local clansmen, but the tenant farmers, so he put his foot on the footstool and asked relaxedly, oh? What promises did you give? Master Tang said, my younger brother promised those tenant farmers that the land will still be leased to them even after the land is redeemed, and now you can sign the tenancy agreement for next year, and the rent will never exceed 40%. Inspector Yu twitched the corners of his mouth and asked, you won't make this promise with every tenant in the village, right? No, no, Master Tang said quickly, I did it with a village, that is, the village of Da'an village. He only came back today, and the promise was made today. He explained, Yu Shishi didn't know, Da'an village is the largest village we have visited in the past few days. There are 167 households with a total of 978 people. Inspector Yu was surprised, so many people, nearly 2 miles away, can almost form a township. Tang He shook his head and said, unfortunately, there are no villages around it. This village was not formed naturally, but was relocated a few years ago to facilitate the cultivation of these fields. Therefore, it cannot become a township. 10 li is a township. Generally, the villages are small. Like Li village, it does not have a li, it is still a li with some households in Dali village. The head of the li is the person from Dali village. Like a village that is more than 1 mile away, it is a very big village. For example, in Dali village, there are not only large markets, but also Taoist temples, doctors, meat stalls, and people who specialize in buying and selling food. The villagers in their area never go to Beimaguan town to buy or sell things. Because going to the county seat and Beimaguan town is about the same distance, even closer than the town. When Bai Shan saw the location of Da'an village at that time, he knew that it was a place specially chosen by people with intentions, in order to keep them isolated from the world and less contact with others. Generally, such large villages are a little richer than other villages, but Da'an village is so poor that it doesn't even smell oily. From the elderly to the children, the clothes they wear are all patches, and some young adults, directly wearing short jackets, because there is only one Da'an village in that place, and they can't do anything except farming. Tang He was a local official, and naturally he saw the key at a glance, so at this moment he couldn't help but hinted to remind the governor you, and said with a smile, my apprentice is young, and reading is a little stupid. Seeing that they have no food or clothing, even though we appease them and say that they will cultivate the land in the future, they are still apprehensive and make such a promise in public, even foolishly posting their own famous post. It's all handed out. Yu Tishi looked at Bai Shan seriously, and smiled after a while. Master Bai has a kind-heartedness, but it is understandable. Tang He sighed and said, but these fields are public fields in Kizhu after all. I'm only responsible for buying them back. How can I settle the lease on behalf of the house, so I have to ask the governor Yu. Inspector Yu smiled and said, it's easy to say, so, how about I go to the countryside with Master Tang tomorrow? He smiled and said, as long as Master Tang doesn't dislike me, we can go to the countryside to deal with this matter together. This is fast and convenient, and it can also comfort people as quickly as possible. How about that? Master Tang smiled all over his face. Tang can't ask for anything. In this way, we have agreed that we will go to the countryside together tomorrow. Okay, tomorrow Tang will wait in the governor's mansion and go to the countryside together. Tang He glanced at the lieutenant behind Governor Yu, got up and said with a smile, since it's settled, I won't disturb Governor Yu's grooming. Inspector Yu also got up to see him off. After sending him to the door, he said, Master Tang can relax in the backyard and wait for a while. When I change my clothes, I will immediately come and invite Master Tang to a banquet together. Tang He nodded with a smile, and left with Bai Shan. When he left the main courtyard, the smile on Tang He's face faded, but Bai Shan's eyes were full of smiles. Brother Tang, this new prefect is a wonderful person, and it seems that if you kill someone with your hands, you can control the situation with confidence. See you at 6 p.m. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2612. Tang He glanced at him and said, our group has become a foil. After a few words, are you still happy? Bai Shan smiled and reassured him, it's the same journey through different journeys. Thank you so much for this, Senior. When I go back, I will invite Senior to Jafula for dinner. I want 10 meals. It is estimated that the salary will be due for a month. Bai Shan is a little heartbroken, but with a smile on his face, it's easy to talk, easy to talk. It was getting dark early in the morning, but Master Tang didn't go back to the house. Instead, he followed Inspector Yu's words and turned around in the backyard garden. At this time, he will definitely be arrested by Liang Yushi and the others. He has not thought about what to say to persuade them, so he decides to avoid them temporarily, and he also wants to think about this Inspector Yu. He walked in the darkness with his hands behind his back, turned his head and said to Bai Shan, although walking with him will be a little more restrictive, looking at his words and deeds today, it is true that there are both rough and subtle. Since he has a plan in his heart, then we are not afraid. In officialdom, they are not afraid of their opponents, but they are afraid of pig teammates. Since their new teammates are not pigs, Master Tang doesn't mind making a slight concession in the situation of cooperation. In the main courtyard, Inspector Yu took off his clothes and soaked it in the tub, and said, "This Master Tang is very generous," and thought that this time he came here not only to deal with the various forces in Kizhu, but also to deal with the inspections from the capital. I didn't expect that. He's very reasonable. The lieutenant stood outside the screen and replied, "Is it for the Lord Bai?" Lord Tang seems to value the Lord Bai very seriously, and does not want him to offend the Lord and break the rules of the officialdom. Moreover, Lord Tang calls him a junior, his behavior, the demeanor seems to be friendly too. Inspector Yu rubbed the mud on his body vigorously and said indifferently, "I know, when I was in the capital, I went to Ping'an to find out that Bai Shan was a student of the Imperial College, and then he entered the Chongguan Hall as a companion to the prince, and he was also a former Yizhu student. Students from Fuxia, whether they are from Yizhu Fuxia or Kuazijian students, all have a relationship with Tang He, but this official did not expect their relationship to be so good. But it's also good. Selling their favor will make it easier to get along later." Inspector Yu thought of something, shook his head and smiled and said, "But this shouldn't be the key reason. The most important thing is that this is the fastest way to quell the riots of the tenants." "What are you going to do, sir?" Inspector Yu said, "Since we want to rent the land to Dayan village, why not just rent it to all the tenants who rent the land? What does it mean to rent for 1 year? This official can let them rent for 3 years, or even 5 years. My lord, this is a wonderful move. In this way, it is a gift for them. In the future, it will be easier for us to manage affairs in Kizhu." Inspector Yu said, "I just cut someone down, but I have to be softer. It's just that the tenant rent that Mr. Bai has promised is too small. Inspector Yu, if there's anything to worry about, it's only 3 or 5 years. After these 3 or 5 years, you can mention another achievement. At that time, it is estimated that the adults will not be here, and this benefit will not fall on the adults." Inspector Yu said indifferently, "I am charging 50% to 60% of the rent now, and this benefit will not fall on me. Do you think the Ministry of Household is giving us Kizhu money in vain?" He said, "It's all to be paid back, but now it is because there is no money in the treasury of Kizhu, so the Ministry of Household has advanced it. Before I came out, Lu Shangshu specifically asked me to talk to him, or he would search the house and return the money for this redemption to the Ministry of Household. Or, in the future, the land that has been redeemed will be returned to the household every year until this part of the arrears is paid off." Inspector Yu said, "I've already thought about it, I won't pay back the ready-made money." He said, "It will take more than a year for the output of the fields to come out, but now Kizhu does not need money for doing things. Let the household department slowly collect these rents." The lieutenant couldn't help but laughed, "Your Excellency is brilliant." Master Tang walked around the garden, buzzed by mosquitoes, and when he was really annoyed, he turned around and took Bai Shan back to the front. He said, "This Inspector Yu is so shrewd and old-fashioned that Lu Shangshu will suffer this time." Bai Shan said, "I'm afraid Lu Shangshu is more shrewd than him, but I don't think he will suffer." Tang Daran said, "This time we bought the money from the Ministry of Household. I thought the new governor would pay it back, but today, looking at the results of this governor, he definitely won't pay it back." He didn't pay it back either. Bai Shan remembered something, and said softly, "Brother, it seems that the land deeds that we bought back have always been in our hands. Didn't Lu Shangshu tell us before that, in order to calculate the money spent, should these land deeds be brought back to the capital for verification? When Master Tang reacted, he was speechless for a while. The two looked at each other and sighed together. Zhang is still old and hot. At this moment, the prefect Yu, who was still unaware, simply rubbed his hair, and after one pass, the water came out, and he said to the lieutenant, "Grandma, just to kill them by surprise, I didn't even bring a maid with me. Go back and ask someone to find Renyazi and buy 2 girls who will serve you. You have to find a sensible person to do the tedious task of washing your hair." The lieutenant smiled. The two returned to the guest house where they lived in front, and before entering the courtyard, they saw Liang Yushi and Ren Yushi standing under the corridor pinching their waists, looking at the two with anger in their eyes. Master Tang paused slightly, lowered his voice and said, "Come on quickly. Who knows that Bai Shan's speed has also slowed down? Brother Tang, you are the chief officer. It's inconvenient because I'm the chief officer, hurry up." Bai Shan had no choice but to return to his normal speed, and passed over Lord Tang and stepped forward to salute the two censors. "Why are Lord Liang and Lord Ren standing here and not entering the room?" Liang Yushi asked with a stern face. "Where did Master Bai and Master Tang go?" Bai Shan smiled and said, "We went for a stroll in the backyard. Speaking of which, we have been in Kishu for about a decade, but we haven't visited the garden in the backyard of the governor's mansion. It's dark and blind, but Master Bai and Master Tang are interested." Bai Shan smiled and said, "Although it's dark, the moonlight is still pretty good." "Censor Ren, where is the moonlight?" Bai Shan looked at the sky subconsciously, only to find 1 or 2 stars in the sky, and the moon disappeared directly behind the dark clouds. He smiled and said, "Xin Guang is also pretty." Liang Yushi and Ren Yushi let out a sigh of relief at his open-eyed nonsense, turned around and entered the room with a cold snort. Tang He smiled slightly and frowned at Bai Shan. When he entered the room, Liang Yushi asked directly, "What is Master Tang's plan for the murder of Inspector Yu?" Tang He sat down on the chair and said with a smile, "Yushi Liang, this official has said that this is not the responsibility of this official, so this official has no plans. It's just like the inspector kills people as soon as he arrives. I'm afraid our relationship that has been eased after this period of time will deteriorate again." Tang He pondered for a moment and then said, "The governor Yu has already promised to rent the land to the tenants and give them a better share, so this official thinks that most of the problems of the tenants have been solved, and the rest, as long as the momentum is concerned. If you hold down the families again, the matter will be done." The two censors looked at each other and knew Tang He's plan. Bai Shan smiled and said, "Lord Liang, Lord Ren, the main purpose of our visit to Kishu this time is to appease the people and buy land. If these 2 things are done, we can return to Beijing. The rest is the Kishu prefect's office." Thing. The two censors fell silent and stopped talking. A sergeant came to invite them. "Sir, the food is ready, Governor Yu invites all of you to come to the table." Master Tang got up and said with a smile, "Let's go, we can go to the backyard and have a chat with Governor Yu. See you at 9. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2613. Inspector Yu killed 3 people as soon as he arrived, which happened to be the 3 most active tenants who had been agitating the tenants during this period of time. Tang He and the others had done research, and in the first 2 days, they thought about gnawing at them before subduing others, so it would be quicker, and who knows that it would not work at all, so they changed another strategy. This time, Governor Yu killed someone, and the governor's house in Kishu was quiet. The next day, Governor Yu went to the countryside with the officials who came to inspect the capital. The Zhu family, the Chai family, and the Zhang family were angry and scared, but because they were not familiar with the new governor, they were afraid that he would stay in a barbarian place like Yunzhou for a long time. them. Although in the end he could use this as an excuse to overthrow him, his own dead people couldn't be resurrected either. They dared not take their lives to spell out the future of the inspector. Those who are barefoot are not afraid of wearing shoes, but the Zhu family, the Chai family and the Zhang family are not barefoot. On the contrary, their families are big and prosperous. They wear satin shoes with exquisite embroidery, not to mention bare feet. Feet, even standing on slightly rough ground, is uncomfortable. So they dare not. It can only be ruthless and afraid of the horizontal. Obviously, this Inspector Yu is horizontal. Inspector Yu seemed to know that the iron had to be struck while the iron was hot, so he suggested to Tang He to go to the sites of Zhu's, Chai's, and Zhang's homes first. Tang He readily agreed. So a group of people turned around. This time, the personal soldiers brought by Governor Yu, the officers and soldiers of the governor's mansion, and the guards they brought from the capital, the imperial guards, directly drove all the tenants who had caused trouble some time ago to the open space. Inspector Yu was not as gentle as Bai Shan, and as soon as he stepped forward, he received hatred and fearful glances from everyone. Inspector Yu did not frown and looked at Tang He. Tang He gave him a slight smile and asked Bai Shan to go forward to preach. Bai Shan, who was wearing a light red official uniform, stepped forward, stood in front of the crowd, and told them loudly but gently why the court wanted to take back these fields and what to do with them in the future. Inspector Yu standing with a golden sword in Malaysia. This is a bit beyond his expectations. Why do these imperial policies have to be preached in such detail? When he was in Yunzhou, a considerable part of the people in the city were soldiers and exiled prisoners, and they all had to be banned. He only needed to order. He glanced at Bai Shan, and felt that it was a bit annoying for him to talk to others in a serious manner, so he kept looking at Master Tang with his eyes. Master Tang ignored him. Liang Yushi and Ren Yushi also stood aside with serious expressions. Slowly, the keen Inspector Yu realized something was wrong, and he looked at the tenants standing below. The anger and fear on their faces dissipated a lot, and some even looked up at them seriously, and there seemed to be tears in their eyes. After Bai Shan finished preaching, he pointed at Tang He and said, "This is the Shangguan of this official, and also the chief official appointed by His Majesty to inspect here. With him here, this official dare not speak falsely, so you can trust my words." He pointed at Inspector Yu again and said, "This is the new inspector of Kizhu, your Lord Inspector. Lord Inspector pity Er and others who have lost ground, and came here specially to see you." He looked at Governor Yu, and Governor Yu also looked at him, and the tenant farmers below looked up at Governor Yu. Inspector Yu stepped forward and said, "When the land here is redeemed, this official will let you sign a tenancy contract with you. If you are interested in tenancy, you can talk to the Likame directly." His eyes fell coldly on Li Chang. "Anyone who is interested can rent a lease. You have memorized the name. If there is one person missing." The chief immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed, "Yes, yes, the little one will not dare to miss the note." Inspector Yu nodded. Bai Shan waited for a while, and seeing that he didn't speak anymore, he had no choice but to take a step forward, raised his hand to suppress the rising voices of discussion, and said, "Your Excellency, the prefect takes pity on you poor and weak, and the sage has repeatedly told me to treat you kindly. Therefore, if the official land that was bought back this time is rented out, only 40% of the rent will be charged." As soon as these words came out, the voice of the discussion grew louder. Several old people knelt down and kowtowed, and said loudly, "Xie Shengren, thank you, the governor." Seeing this, the others also knelt down and shouted, "Thank you, Saint, thank you, sir." Inspector Yu raised his eyebrows high, first glanced at Bai Shan, and then his face softened. He got off the high platform built by the table, helped the first few old people up, and sighed, "Forget it, you were also caught before. Why bother with you if you are deceived and persecuted, Let's not blame the past, from today onwards, you can cultivate well. These words were sudden, but the old man who was being supported burst into tears. At the same time, a big stone in their heart slammed to the ground. They knelt on the ground with a plop and led everyone to kowtow again. This time, they had to be more sincere. Sincerely, he choked up and said loudly, thank you sir, you are very kind. Master Tang raised his eyebrows slightly at Bai Shan. Look, I will say that he is thick and thin, and he is also very rapacious in his belly. Just this sentence can instantly gather the people's hearts that were soothed by Bai Shan's ramble. Master Tang folded his hands in his sleeves and thought, as long as Inspector Yu did what he said and leased the purchased land to them at 40% of the rent, without tax or levy, these people would definitely swear allegiance to him. It's a local clan, I'm afraid it will be difficult to shake him again. Inspector Yu also felt the hearts of the people, his eyes shone brightly, and he couldn't help looking back at Bai Shan after he helped him up. He is not a fool, and he has 4 years of experience as a provincial governor. Even if the situation in Yunzhou is different from that in Qizhou, the people are similar, and they are all ordinary people. Even in Yunzhou, it took him 4 years to have such popular support. But that was what he brought people to the death to destroy the bandits, and fought against the Turkic horse thieves who appeared from time to time on the grasslands. It took him 4 years to fight. But here, he just stood on the high platform and said a few words. Of course he didn't think that saying these words directly would have such a big effect, if there was no foreshadowing by Bai Shan for nearly an hour. It seems that this white adult is not useless. Inspector Yu's heart moved, so the thing he promised people to rent yesterday was really as soft and kind-hearted as Tang, he said, stupid in reading, or, intentional. Inspector Yu smiled slightly and looked away. The rest of the matter is not about Bai Shan, and to appease the tenant, Yu and Tang, he turned around and took people to Zhu's house. Bai Shan took the bamboo tube from Daji and took a sip of water. Daji sighed and said, Manbao has prepared a lot of medicine, but he forgot to prepare the medicine for my throat. Daji said, Master, you talk too much, why don't you let other adults come on next time? Bai Shan sighed, who is it? We can't let Swexiang Tang and Yu Thorn in history, right? The two censors don't need to think about it, they came to watch them, and they looked more majestic than senior brother Tang. See you tomorrow, add more tomorrow, let me talk first to urge myself. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2614. Inspector Yu rode his horse back and glanced at Bai Shan, who was at the end, then turned his head and smiled at Tang He. The people brought by Master Tang are really not in vain, this official admires. Tang He smiled and said, Yu Inspector has praised him. Inspector Yu smiled slightly, and deliberately pulled the horse behind a little bit. When Bai Shan came up, he asked him, have you thought about putting a place outside? There are still many vacancies under my inspector's house, although they are not as expensive as those in Beijing. But the quality is not very low. The officials in the inspectorate's office, which were not lower in rank than he was now, were Changshi and Sima. Changshi already has someone, let him be a Sima. Bai Shan twitched the corners of his mouth and declined. Master Tang said with a smile, Master Yu, I'm still here, why don't you dig my people in front of me? Inspector Yu said with a smile, Master Tang, Master Bai is only following you temporarily. The short term is 10 days, and the long one is 1 month. He is not your subordinate. How can I not grab it? It's useless to rob. Bai Shan doesn't even look down on Wanyan County Magistrate, let alone come to Qizhou to be his Sima Enchenchi. Zhu's house is a little far away, but they will arrive soon. Someone has been paying attention to the situation on the farm. As long as the tenant's emotions were calmed down, someone quietly flew back to report the letter. Inspector Yu and Master Tang deliberately let go. Therefore, after arriving at Zhu's house, they managed to meet the eldest master of Zhu's house. Well, today Zhujia is in the process of mourning. The mourning hall of the second master of the Zhu family was arranged in the lobby, and Governor Yu walked in without changing his face, and even took 3 incense sticks for the family. The Zhu family stared at him with red eyes, but the eldest master of the Zhu family only had a sad face, but his face was calm. Inspector Yu put the incense in and moved aside, and Master Tang brought Bai Shan forward and put a stick of incense. Then they looked at Master Zhu and said, "Master Zhu, we bought it today for the official land redemption." Master Zhu wanted to speak, but Master Tang raised his hand slightly to stop him, and said first, "Master Zhu also knows that I am here to inspect from the capital, and there is not much time, so we can't afford to delay it, so we will talk about it today." "How about a talk?" Liang Yushi said coldly, "It has been 23 days since the imperial court's announcement, and if you want to come to Zhu's house, you have already prepared it. Today, the governor of the governor is here, and the subordinates of the chief official and household department in the governor's mansion are also here. I can cut the knot, so I won't delay Master Zhu for too long." Master Zhu said, "It also takes time to measure the land." Yushi Ren took out a roll of paper and said, "No need, I investigated it when I came to Kizhu last time, and I know how many officials and fields there are, and I want to come to Master Zhu." Master Zhu forced a smile and said, "Yes." He turned around and took them to the side yard, and asked the housekeeper to fetch the title deed and accountant. Tang he stood in the yard watching, smiled slightly, and said to Governor Yu, "When we first came to Kizhu, we came to Zhu's house on the first day, but unfortunately we closed the door and said that the host's family was not there. When I went to the farm to see the tenants, I was stopped before I even entered the village, almost got into a fight, and finally had to leave." Inspector Yu said, "Master Tang acted too softly." Tang he smiled slightly, but did not argue. With different identities and different positions, the consequences they can bear are naturally different. He is a Beijing official. If he acts too aggressively and annoys the people of Kizhu, once they riot, I don't know how many people will be killed and how many crops will be destroyed. Not to mention the provincial governor, he is the parental official of the entire Kizhu. Parents discipline their children, and they are born with an advantage." Seeing that the Zhu family took out the title deed, Tang he clapped his hands gently, and the guards of the imperial army carried boxes of money from the car and opened them in front of everyone. In one day, they bought back all the 8 hectares of land that the Zhu family had bought from the governor's mansion. Then they directly left 2 subordinates in the tenant village, and asked them to leave the tenants to handle the tenancy contract for the coming year, which can be rented for up to 3 years. This news quickly spread from this area, and the summer wind blew through every village, so the tenant farmers in other places didn't need to spend any more words, just went up and preached Bai Shan to ensure that they and the Zhu family's side after the tenants were treated the same. They honestly said that there would be no trouble. With the support of Inspector Yu, the god of killing, their redemption work went very smoothly. But Inspector Yu also valued Bai Shan more and more. Inspector Yu excitedly said to his lieutenant, "See, the same sentence, the effect I get is different from Bai Shan's." "Lieutenant General, it's different for him." If Bai Shan said with a smile that he would give him a promotion and a raise, his eyes would light up. If the adults said, as long as he thought about whether the adults should laugh or not, he told him with cold eyes that he would be promoted and raised, and he just wanted to kneel down and beg for mercy. Inspector Yu stroked his short beard and sighed, "Unfortunately, he has no intention of coming to my Kizhu. Otherwise, I'll take him out after we work together. That would save a lot of trouble." The lieutenant said, "My lord, I have inquired with the imperial guard from the capital. This Lord Bai is favored in the capital. He was promoted to the Zhongsha province after only 1 year of entering the dynasty, and he is also the companion of His Royal Highness. I heard that he is also highly trusted by His Royal Highness, and is a popular man in front of His Majesty and His Highness. Inspector Yu, so we were making a fool of ourselves, and we were fooled by Tang He, thinking that he really made a promise that he made carelessly and carelessly. Aren't the adults angry? What are you angry about? This matter will benefit the people under my rule. The people under my rule will benefit, that is, I will benefit. However, I still want to keep him, and I will give your majesty a book to ask for someone later. It is impossible for the emperor to agree to him. What Bai Shan wanted was to go to a place where Emperor Tiangao was far away, and the emperor also wanted to see what he could achieve in a place with less control. Naturally, he wouldn't be put in Kizhu. So I gave him a no-no. Before Bai Shan left Kizhu, he learned about it from the drunk governor Yu, who was holding his hand reluctantly. He breathed a sigh of relief, and then thanked the governor for his love. Bai Shan and Tang He watched people put the boxes on the carriage. Yu inspector came to see them off, and said with a laugh, Kizhu is not very far from the capital. Brother Tang, brother Bai, come to Kizhu to find me when you are free. I invite you to drink and eat meat. Tang He smiled and said, why didn't Master Yu go to the capital to find us? How can I enter Beijing casually? Tang He immediately said, I, the Shaiyan of Jingzhou Mansion, can't just leave the capital. Inspector Yu thought so too, so he looked at Bai Shan. Bai Shan is really okay, his identity is not as sensitive as the two of them, but, he doesn't want to come. But Bai Shan still raised a smile and replied, okay, if I come to Kizhu, I will definitely find an adult. I was going to write another book, but I ended up writing this chapter as I wrote it. I thought I'd just write more. See you tomorrow. Farmer's Blessed Girl. Author, Yu Yuzu. Chapter 2615. Inspector Yu sent them out of the city, and Bai Shan's return was like an arrow, and a group of lords are not people who say goodbye hand in hand and leave on horseback. Bai Shan and Master Tang ran at the front on horseback, and Governor Yu watched their horses with their sleeves flying away slowly run away, stroked their beards and said, it's a pity. The lieutenant asked, what a pity? It's a pity that no one can grab it. Inspector Yu glanced at him and said, if you were as clever as Lord Bai, I wouldn't say that. Lieutenant General, if you have a humble position, then you won't be in the army. You can directly study for the imperial examinations, and it's not a loss to be a Jinchi in your 30s or 40s. Inspector Yu, there is still a face to say. He turned around and said, let's go back. After taking 2 steps and remembering, he turned his head and said to Chang Shi, I read the household registration register in the past 2 days and found that there are many Chengding who have not been assigned fields in the past 2 years. You go back and ask the counties to sort out the list and report it. 3. During the year, Chengding did not receive any reissue from Yanjiashan. Chang Shi was stunned for a moment and then asked, Sir, should the land be distributed from the purchased land, or from the official land elsewhere? Inspector Yu waved his hand indifferently and said, nearest, where is their home? The nearest field is divided for them, but this year's crops have already been planted, and they will be divided in autumn. Now I will count them first, and then I will go back to the planned fields and roster. All are collected, and this official has to see it in person. Chang Shi responded, and then stopped talking. Inspector Yu glanced at him, wanting to be as indignant as in Yunzhou, but thinking that this is Kizhu, not Yunzhou where bandits are rampant, so he restrained his anger and squeezed out a stiff smile. Chenchi has something to say. Just say. My lord, we can only divide Yanjai fields from other official fields, because the land we just bought back, the land deeds are all taken away by Master Tang. They will send it back after they get the accounting from the household department. Chang Shi was silent. Kizhu is not very far from the capital. Due to its geographical location, the Ministry of Household often contacts Kizhu and wants to set up some job fields in Kizhu. The employment fields in the capital and Yangzhou are almost saturated. Although the land loss under the emperor's feet is not serious, there is still the phenomenon of embezzlement. It is the same as encroachment. Therefore, officials in Kizhu have more opportunities to deal with the Ministry of Housing. Lu Shangshu, who has been sitting in the position of the Minister of the Ministry of Household for nearly 10 years, is a wild goose plucking hairs. Sent back unremarkably. When Governor Yu saw his expression, he couldn't help but stop. He immediately turned to look at the vanishing convoy. The lieutenant also became anxious and asked, "Sir, do you want to go after him?" Inspector Yu turned around twice, but in the end he had to stomp his feet hard. At this time, if you catch up, your friends have nothing to do, and you may not be able to get them back. Chang Shi was also afraid of a conflict between the governor and the capital official, so he quickly said, "Yes, maybe we think too much. Lu Shangshu will send the land deed back after the review, otherwise we will go to the official document to urge you in a few days." Inspector Yu could only nod his head. Let the counties quickly count the list, and tell the Ministry of Household that we are in a hurry to use the land to divide the Yanjai field. Long history should be under. It is impossible to take the initiative to send it back. Lu Shangshu walked around the 3 large boxes with his hands behind his back. He was very happy and waved his hand, "Transfer a few experienced people and let them do the accounting. If there is no problem with the accounts, then sign them." Master Tang handed over the land deed to the Ministry of Housing, and turned around to enter the palace to resume his life. After thinking of something, he turned around and called Bai Shan, let's go to the palace together." Bai Shan followed, but the report was the chief officer's business, so he didn't go to the Taiji Hall, but wandered to the Taiji Hospital. When the imperial physicians of the Imperial Hospital saw him, they smiled and said, "Master Bai is back." Bai Shan nodded with a smile, swept his eyes around the lobby, looked at the office at the back, and asked, "It's hot in the summer. Are the imperial physicians busy recently?" Seeing that his eyes kept glancing back, Imperial physician Zheng held back his smile and nodded solemnly, "Yeah, with the heat, many people get sick. Then the imperial physicians should pay more attention to the epidemic." Imperial Dr. Zheng nodded again and again, "Don't worry, Master Bai, we have been very careful." Bai Shan was speechless. He had been standing here talking for a long time. Why didn't Man Bao come out? That is. Bai Shan glanced in again, but still couldn't hold back and asked, "Is Master Zhou not in the Imperial Hospital?" "Oh, so it turns out that Lord Bai came to look for Imperial Dr. Zhou," Zheng Imperial Doctor said with a smile. "Dr. Zhou went out to the clinic, and it is estimated that he will not be back until the afternoon. Do you want to sit and wait for Lord Bai?" No need, Bai Shan said with a smile, "I'm here to ask for a bottle of pills to relieve the heat and strengthen the stomach." Imperial physician Zheng went to take it for him with a smile, and Bai Shan left under the smiling eyes of the imperial physicians. After leaving the Tai hospital, he exhaled a sigh of relief, and after thinking about it, he simply went to the Zhongshu province for a walk, and after handing in the errand, he left the palace and went home. Since Man Bao went out to the clinic in the morning, he must go home for a meal and rest at noon. Bai Shan took Daji and a guard home, and before dismounting, someone ran out of the door. The eyes of the pair lit up. Bai Shan threw the rope to Daji and ran forward. "Are you going out?" Zhou Man shook his head with bright eyes, raised his head to look at him, shook his head and said, "No, I heard from the guard that you are back. Are you on business?" She thought he was doing business in the palace at this time, so she wanted to enter the palace to see, who knew that he had also come home. Bai Shan took her hand and turned to enter the door. He smiled and said, "I just came out of the palace. I just need to order Mao at Zhongshu province. Your Majesty will have Shuexiang Tang and Yushi Liang to answer." The two walked back happily holding hands. After talking earnestly with the emperor for half an hour, and because Liang Yushi complained that he was delayed in the palace for an hour, when Master Tang left the palace, he was already hungry. It was only when he stood at the gate of the palace that he remembered, "Father, Bai Shan is also in the palace, and I forgot to call him out." Originally, he wanted Bai Shanho to be in the side hall of the Taiji Hall. If the emperor summoned him, he could show his face. Who knew that Liang Yushi was so unaccustomed to use shishi, and he complained after reporting his work. The guard guarding the palace gate said kindly, "Master Tang, Master Bai left the palace more than an hour ago." "Master Tang." Old Master Tang glanced at him, then turned around and said, "Let's go, your wife is waiting for you at home. It's just how long you've been away on business, and you're all sloppy. You don't know how to turn yourself upside down when you enter the palace." Master Tang followed silently. "See you at 6 p.m.